Hi, and welcome to the Futurex Podcast. My name is Michael Krutikov. I'm the VP of Global Marketing here. And today I am joined by Ben Barrows. Ben?
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Ben Barrows, I'm the lead integration engineer at Futurex. I've been here about 6.5 years, and I look forward to talking with you about HSMs.
Nice. Well, that's actually our topic and our only topic that we have for the day, which is we're going to get started with the foundation of things. What is an HSM? And so first thing, just to kick it off, what is an HSM, and really what's the easiest way you would explain it to someone who's not in our industry?
So an HSM is a hardware security module, and the easiest way or the most fun way I like to explain it is think of a safe, but it's not just a safe for storing valuables. It's a safe that can actually do work for you. So let's say you have a document, you slide it under the door into the safe, it stamps it or signs it or encrypts it, and then it slides the result back out. But the whole time the key or the stamp stayed inside the safe and you got the result back that you needed.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. What, I guess, when people think about HSMs, a lot of times they may have a different or sometimes even a wrong idea about what is an HSM. What are some of the biggest or most common misconceptions that you've heard out there?
I've heard that it's just a fancy hard drive for storing keys, but it's just as much or just as importantly a device that performs encryption operations. So it's purpose-built to perform encryption operations extremely fast. Signing, wrapping, hashing, really any cryptographic use case you can imagine, it does it as fast as any computer can. So you send data into the HSM, it does what you've asked it to do, and then it sends the result back out. And the whole time the key stayed inside the HSM. Another common misconception is that HSMs are only used by banks, but it's actually used in a lot of other industries like government, PKI, IoT, healthcare.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, kind of the evolution of HSMs. I think that may be part of this story, if we think of it that way, is they did start in banks. It was a way for banks to, communicate and transmit money without having to drop them in an armored car and drive them around town. So
yeah,
a really secure way.
It definitely started with banks because that's where the requirements or compliance requirements started, and they were forced to use HSMs, which was the new technology at the time. But it's expanded in its requirements by different industries at this point.
Yeah. And I think if we, kind of dovetail off of that one, the requirements around the use of cryptographic keys is really what it's all about. Nowadays, a lot of people are looking at different applications, and they're looking at whether those keys are going to be generated inside of a different location and imported into an HSM, or using the HSM for the generation and storage of the keys. What's the real the differentiator between those two? Why do you not want to be importing keys on a regular basis?
So you really don't want to do it at all if you can avoid it. To be honest, it kind of defeats the purpose of an HSM. Ideally, you generate the keys inside the HSM. They live inside the HSM their entire life. They're used, and eventually they're revoked and they die inside the HSM boundary. Even if you, let's say you generate a key outside the HSM and you handle it securely as best you can, and then you transport it to the HSM securely and wrapped and encrypted and everything. The problem is there's a window of time when that key was stored in memory or on disk, and it's prone to human error or side channel attacks. Essentially, it's just a link in the chain that it can be broken and that you can't necessarily trust. You want everything to happen within that secure boundary. Everything inside of the boundary is you can consider trusted. Everything outside of it, you can't consider trusted.
Got it. So even though there are ways to import keys, it's still just not a best practice. If, again, like you said, if you can avoid it, then you don't want to do it.
For sure, for sure. If you can, I mean, there's certain scenarios where organizations might need to import keys, but I would imagine there's a way to generate keys on the HSM if you want the highest assurance possible.
Yeah, and it kind of leads into this the mindset, or where exactly does an HSM fit? I mean, I've got a pretty complex security stack. Most organizations do. We start talking about enterprises, you're looking at usually 50 plus different cybersecurity tools that they've got running. Where does an HSM fit within that stack, and where is it in terms of consideration of being the root of trust?
So the HSM is at the very bottom of the stack. So if you think about it as like a house, it is the bedrock. So all of the basic encryption operations happen. So the keys are generated on the HSM, like we were talking about. Encryption, signing, etc., is performed inside the HSM. And then everything that's on top of that, like TLS connections, digital signing, code signing, that sort of thing, it ultimately relies on keys that are inside the HSM.
Okay. Yeah, and then in terms of the security of the key, right, it's a hardware security module, not software. And we know that it's tamper-evident, tamper-resistant, but what does that mean? What happens if someone tries to get in, or what if they do get in? Take a crowbar to the box. What if they get into that device?
Yeah, so typically the keys are zeroized. That's how it works on Futurex HSMs. And so if someone tries to drill into the HSM physically, and try to get into it, there's detection mechanisms that are in place to see that an attacker is trying to do that, and then the keys are zeroized because you want to lose the HSM. You don't care about losing the HSM in that circumstance. Mm-hmm. You just want the attacker to not be able to access anything on it. In production deployments, you have database backups so that you can restore the keys and restore the data that those keys were protecting, but it does completely zeroize the keys, and then usually the HSM has to be completely reinitialized as well.
Okay. So you talked about the zeroization if somebody gets in. What are some of the differences between tamper-evident and tamper-resistant? And obviously from a FIPS perspective, 140-3 level 3 versus level 2.
Right.
Obviously the regulations come into play, but what does that mean in a practical sense between those two?
So tamper-evident just gives you forensic awareness that something happened after the fact. Tamper-resistant means the device is actively fighting back, which is where Futurex HSMs live.
Got it. All right. So self-destruct, it's going to explode. No, just kidding. But the self-destruct is really key, right? As soon as it recognizes that boundary is attempted to have been breached, whether it's physical or logical.
Right. And it's very important because in certain industries and use cases, it's not good enough to just know after the fact that there was an attack. You have to know immediately, and action has to be taken immediately.
Yeah, and in a zero trust world and zero trust architecture that we really all need to be moving to, hopefully everyone is there, or at least on their way there. But that's the whole point. You've got to assume that the bad actors are already in and trying to move and trying to gather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's a big threat. Speaking of big threats, we've heard a lot about PQC, right? Post quantum computing and post past Q day. It seems interesting to me, right, when we think about that there's this active threat today. Harvest now, decrypt later. Bad actors are already collecting information from numerous, probably hundreds, thousands, millions of organizations. And yet we still live in a world, in this day, 2026, where people are still thinking, oh, I still have time before Q day's here. The reality is actually, well, Q day's already here in a lot of ways, right? If your data is not being already protected by those quantum resistant and algorithms, then whatever they're collecting today is going to be cracked within a few years. So conceptually, yeah, we're moving towards post-quantum computing, but how are we helping our customers prepare for that date in terms of post-quantum capabilities?
Yeah, so I think the date is definitely moving up closer sooner than people would necessarily like. I would guess towards the end of the 20s, 28, 29 is probably when it's going to, you need to really be seeing it in most deployments, because a sufficiently large quantum computer running Shor's algorithm is going to be able to break RSA and ECC eventually, I believe. And so it's really important that you have a HSM vendor like Futurex that allows you to be able to switch out your algorithms on the fly, you know, with firmware updates, just by toggling, which algorithm is used. And I mean, Futurex is on the forefront of that. We, in June of 2025, we were the first PQC, PCI HSM certified HSM vendor to get that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we're trying to be on the forefront of things, and customers are able to be confident and rather than afraid of quantum computers, with Futurex HSMs and the PQC algorithms that NIST has approved that have proven to be quantum resistant.
Yeah, and the reality is things are going to continue to change, right? You talked about that flexibility and ability to adapt, and as a concept, crypto agility is something that we're really pushing for, and being able to move and to be able to toggle it and switch it. The validation is key, of course, that we've got it, but you're not going to, I don't know, fly a satellite into space and have someone show up with a USB key with some updated algorithms to download to it. That's just not going to happen anytime. Yeah. This long-lived data, IoT devices that have a long lifespan, is that where you're seeing some of the early adoption today?
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing a lot of customers start to adopt PQC out in the field.
Yeah, and I'm sure that adoption is just going to accelerate. But to the crypto agility side of things, this isn't going to be the last time we have algorithms change.
Yeah, for sure. I think it would be naive to think that the post-quantum algorithms that are in place today are necessarily going to be the same ones that people are using 20 years from now.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, 20 years seems like numerous lifetimes of algorithm lifespan.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you've got to be on the forefront and make sure, because the attackers are going to be on the forefront of things, and so you have to keep up with them.
Yeah. No, things are accelerating there as well, right? AI-driven breach capabilities and just the amalgamation of things that are moving together, like super apps, where a lot of things are starting to communicate where they didn't used to, and that separation between them is something that is the boundaries are being lowered between applications and data. So
yeah,
obviously having a really strong cryptographic base, as you said, in that root of trust is key for a lot of organizations.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of possibility for organizations that maybe aren't driven by compliance requirements. They're seeing the need for better key management practices, and I think that we could see a major uptick in mid-sized companies wanting to use HSMs, whereas maybe a few years ago they wouldn't have really thought about it. But I think as crypto platforms like CryptoHub get easier to use, I think it lowers the barrier to entry for them and could be a very good thing for organizations.
Yeah, I know CryptoHub is actually on one of our podcast topics that we've got coming up. So excited about that one. I'm glad you touched on CryptoHub. That really, as you said, spot on, which is lowering the barrier of entry. And HSMs were historically very complex. A lot of scripting. I'm not saying people can't script, but it's not fun.
Right.
And it certainly takes a lot more time than what CryptoHub can deliver. We'll save that for another day. But yeah, really appreciate it. One last question I want to ask you, Ben, is, okay, imagine you could wave a magic wand, and what is the future of HSMs in the next 2-3 years that you see that's coming down the line?
Yeah, so I think I'm really excited about CryptoHub and its ability to make the most out of the virtual HSM technology that Futurex has. I think CryptoHub really takes some awesome leaps and bounds on that front. Just looking at integrations, which is something that I do every single day. Even just a few years ago, customers were having to do countless steps of configurations by themselves to get an integration up and going. But with CryptoHub, we've made it where a lot of that is automated, and it just makes it easier for organizations and people to protect their data.
Yeah, I like it. Ben, thanks so much for joining us on today's podcast. Really informative, really great deep dive into this, and kind of teed it up for some future topics. And on that note, I want to thank you.
Absolutely, it was fun.
And teeing it up for future topics, we'll see you at the next Futurex podcast. Thanks again.